Okay, Damien, tell us about John Sr.
Yeah, hello, Ed. Well, John Sr. is commonly equated with the outdoors, the down to earth, the sort of the sort of back to the land movements. There's many people who started many schools, St. Martin's School, St. Greg's, now St. Andrew's even. Very back to earth, very outdoors is part of who John Sr. is, and that's who many people may know John Sr. as sort of outdoors. Yeah, down to earth, rooted in the soil, meant for the stars. That's a common concept of John Sr. that kind of encapsulates a lot of his thoughts. So here I am outside.
Awesome. So tell us everything you know about John Sr.
Well, I can't tell you everything yet, but what I can tell you is starting with the biography. So John Sr. He was born in the early 1900s in eastern United States, Connecticut area, and he was growing up. The town he was in started to try to get more tourists attracted to his town, and he did not like that at all. So about the age 12 or 13, he packed all of his stuff, took any money he had, just started heading west, started buying bus tickets, ran out of gas in one of the Dakotas, and just started walking. He was just going. He was done with all this fancy, you know, tourism. He was looking for something real. And he's out there walking on this dirt road in one of the Dakotas, South Dakota, I think. And this rancher drives along and sees him and stops and says, "Hey, get in my truck. There's a tornado coming." So he hops in his truck and he offers him a job. And John Sr. ends up working for this rancher, and he just loves it. It's down to earth. It's contact with nature. You're busting horses, riding horses, chasing cattle. It's real, and it's something he's not had out in the East Coast. So his father ends up finding out. The rancher calls his father, says, "Hey, your son's alive. He's here, etc., etc." And his father drives from Connecticut all the way out there. Says, "Son, come home." And he says, "All right, Dad, I'll come home if I can come back here each year to work here, because this is real and I want what's real." And his dad agrees. So he does that. He goes back to Connecticut and he comes back every year and works on this ranch. And that was a very formative part of his youth. So he's very smart. Fast forwarding, he's very smart, always very good in literature and poetry. He tutored the local pastor. He didn't grow up with any specific religion, but he was a very thoughtful young man. And so, especially around the age of 20, 25, he starts searching for what's true. As he put it, there was something off between myself and the world, and I needed to understand it. So he's trying to understand what's this grind in his soul. What's there's something wrong. He's starting to search for happiness. What does it mean? Again, he's not religious, didn't grow up in a religious family, so he starts this search, the great search. And so he goes on to try to join the Communist Party. He tries to join the Socialist Party, and they tell him, well, I think at first, I think it was the Communists. Eventually, he realized, okay, there's something a little bit off, but these Socialists, they've got something. So he goes to them, and they tell him, hey, finish up your degree before you're really useful to us. And anyways, they kind of tell him off, however it ends up. So he ends up studying philosophy. Instead of trying to join an actual organization, he starts studying philosophy. He studies, in particular, the Eastern philosophies. So especially Hindu, Buddhism, all those Eastern religions from India, all in that area. He follows their philosophical tenets, their ideas down to their cores, and he actually starts becoming a practicing Hindu. I think dabbled in some Buddhism, a little bit of yoga and everything, but he's looking for something true. That's the important part here. And what he sees is there is something that is rational, at least. There's something intelligent there. Now, we'll get into this a little bit later, but it's a disorder, but it's at least intelligent. So he's looking for something real and he's finding something here. So that's where he
Mhm.
starts. Later on, he's introduced to St. Thomas Aquinas, the Greek philosophers, especially Aristotle. And then he reads John Henry Newman. He's just fascinated with John Henry Newman. He goes on to teach John Henry Newman in college, especially for years and years and years. He's not a Catholic. He's actually a practicing like Hindu at this time, but he is teaching the works of John Henry Newman. Then at this time, he's also, like I said, reading all these other Western philosophers. So the Greeks, the Romans, the Western world, the Latin writers, like I said, especially St. Thomas Aquinas and Aristotle. And he sees there's also intelligence. There's something rational there as well. And it's kind of beautiful. So he's kind of torn. Okay, there's both these sort of make sense. And long story short, one day he just walks into the chaplain's office and says, I'm done. I want to be Catholic. This makes sense. I've taught Newman. I've read him. Like he goes on this whole list of I've read all these things and I understand. I want to be a Catholic, Father. And the priest says, okay. Like what? Good. Have you ever read the Catechism? He says, what's that?
Huh.
So the priest gives him the Baltimore Catechism and he reads that and he says that was the best book he ever read. It had
Wow.
all the answers to all the questions he had. He goes home to his wife, honey, this whole Hindu thing, we're giving it up. We're going to be Catholic tomorrow. So he becomes Catholic just like that. So after all this, he lives as a Catholic and he continues teaching these philosophers, the Western philosophers, the Greek literature, Aristotelian philosophy in general, but especially he's always been very good at teaching and understanding, interpreting literature and poetry. And so in teaching the classics, many people begin to follow his thought and start converting to Catholicism. He had a big liberal arts program that he himself founded, started at University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas. I believe it's in Lawrence. And like I said, many people started converting to Catholicism because of the beauty, the rationality, the excellence of the works he was teaching. So eventually, some people were not happy with that. The whole program got shut down. He ended up teaching at St. Mary's Academy, the SSPX chapel in St. Mary's.
Wait,
He
really?
was, yes, oh yes, he was
I
there.
don't think I knew that.
My father actually attended a conference by him there. I guess maybe he only gave conferences, but he was there consistently. A very close
Okay.
friend to the society priest there. He's buried in St. Mary's Cemetery. Yeah. So
Really? Okay, I don't
yes,
think I knew that because I was taught by Andrew Sr. at St. Mary's College,
yes.
who is his son,
Yep,
but I guess I didn't
yep,
realize the
yep.
actually the deep connections that were there. Interesting.
Yes, my father actually attended one of his lectures when he was in college there,
Okay.
1989, I believe.
Okay.
Yes. So, yep. So that's sort of his bio in a nutshell, the the 3 minute version. So now today, I think we're talking a little bit more about specifically his first book, The Death of Christian Culture. Probably the most his two main books that he's known for are The Death of Christian Culture and The Restoration of Christian Culture. Now these books were written in the 1970s and absolute masterpieces. Great books. I would highly recommend them to anyone. There is a little bit of philosophical language. There's a lot. It's fairly dense, so you do want to have some academic experience before that to get everything that's in there. But if you're attentive, you can definitely get a lot from them. So today's John Senior's Death of Christian Culture, looking at the ideas in that book and what he explains. So the Death of Christian Culture basically says, how did we get here today? Today's society, culture, Catholic culture, we always hear about, the great Middle Ages and everything. Where did that go? Like, did it just, everyone died? Everyone fell asleep? Like, what happened? Are we all just stupid? Are we, just evolving to some lesser class of human? What happened? How did we get here? How did we lose that? So John Senior goes back to the 1500s or so, and he studies, especially through poetry and art, he studies the movement, man's relationship to God, and how man views that relationship as a culture, and how man sees how he misinterprets that there's something off in his understanding of that relationship, and he tries to overcorrect it. You get a sort of pendulum swing back and forth of focusing on God, focusing on man, focusing on the spiritual, focusing on the material, and eventually getting to today modernism, which we'll get to. So, to set out the overarching philosophies we're going to be dealing with. So, John Senior starts out his book talking about the two main philosophies in the world. They're, excuse me, the two main cultures, which are founded on the two main philosophies in the world. That's Western culture, founded on Western philosophy, and Eastern culture, founded on Eastern philosophy. Now, Senior does term these as the perennial philosophy, the philosophy that goes throughout time, and he calls the Eastern philosophy, the perennial heresy. So that
Ah, okay.
heresy that goes all throughout time, it's always there. They're both kind of warring. Anyways, so what is Western culture? What is Eastern culture? What are these philosophies that they're founded on? So he starts with, well, let's start with Eastern culture. So, as Senior did as well, Eastern culture, from what he found, this is, people can debate, and it's not perfect. It's not a comprehensive doctoral thesis, or anything. He's just giving you a basic outline of the Eastern philosophical principles.
Quick
Yes.
clarification. When you say Eastern, what do you mean by Eastern? Where
Uh,
is Eastern?
yeah, that's a good question. So Eastern is more or less starting more or less India and China are the main places, but
Okay.
really it's the whole philosophy behind that culture, and we'll explore that a little bit more. But normally it's for sure the Pakistan, etc., the whole Middle East and the Far East. Those tended to have a very similar culture. Now, you can
Mhm.
obviously have Western culture coming into the Eastern geographical places, but
Mhm.
that's generally how that went. The Western philosophies were born of especially the Greek philosophy,
Right.
starting with the
Okay.
Romans, especially in the practical side. But yeah, Western philosophies, the Romans, the Greeks, and the Eastern philosophies much more Hindu and Buddhist.
Okay.
Yep, yep. So, Eastern philosophy, how it starts is man recognizes that he desires the infinite. Man has this desire to go beyond himself, to be eternal, to participate in the eternal, the divine. But what does this mean? Before you have revelation, or even after there's revelation, but it's sort of not understood or misunderstood, more likely. What do you do? How does man figure out what this desire for the infinite is? Now, again, Uh, this probably sounds a little bit modern, but I'm just sketching a broad stroke here, and this is this. So, man desires the infinite. Well, what is the infinite? Well, what is the finite? You look around and you see things. Everything has a boundary. The trees behind me, you can see where they end. You could circumscribe them. You could draw a line, a circle around them, and you say the tree is right there. Okay, it's finite. Anything that has being has boundaries. It has finite edges. Okay. Those are finite things. But none of these things make us happy. We desire the infinite. We desire to go beyond. Okay. Well, how do we find that? Again, we haven't gotten very far. Well, they start to notice there's sort of two sides to everything. There's up, there's down. There's left, there's right. There's hot, there's cold. There's love, there's anger. There's, most fundamentally, there's being, a tree that exists, and there's non being. They see this finiteness, these beings existing or non existing, is just another part of this duality. It's part of everything here in this world. The infinite is abstracted from that. It's beyond that. It's void of any of this trickery, this duality, this top and bottom, this inside out, this none of that. The infinite has nothing to do with this finite world.
Say
So
more.
this is where you get, yeah.
Say more about that. The things are inside of each other. You mentioned something like
Ah,
that.
Well, yeah. So we see the yin and the yang. That's very common imagery. You know, for example, in that symbol, you have a little dot of the black that's inside the white, and a little dot of the white that's inside the black. Now, in any contrary, in any duality, there is some similarity. Right and left are similar in that they're going along the same plane, just they're exact opposites. Up and down have some similarity. They have to be joined in some way. Up and down, they're in the same plane, but they're just opposites again. So they have something similar, or they wouldn't be opposites. But yeah, so then here, being and non being, existing or not existing, those are just a trickery, a duality. It's a separate thing. To find infiniteness, this infinity, you have to just leave that. You have to leave everything because it's just caught up in a lower plane than what we desire for happiness.
And all of this, the explanation, this is all still the Eastern philosophy, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And this is explained by Senior in the book, right?
Yes, exactly. He has another book. His doctoral thesis is called "The Way Down and Out." He was not Catholic at this time, and from what I hear, it's a very iffy book. But
Okay.
that whole it's the way down and out the occult in symbolist literature. So
Whoa.
he's
Okay.
following, yeah, he's following like he's trying to find this the sort of the hidden message, the hidden philosophy that's in literature. And he's searching so badly for this secret, this philosophy, these principles. And so yeah, this is when he's writing as a Catholic, he boils sort of all that down into these principles. But yes, this is his explanation of the Eastern philosophies.
So in the book, the death of Christian culture, as John Senior is explaining the Eastern philosophy, what is his point in explaining all of this Eastern philosophy?
Yeah, so in explaining the Eastern philosophy, he will throughout the book, he'll show you how we went in the 1500s from this Western philosophy and this Western culture, this Christian culture, which is based on this Western philosophy, and how we end up shifting to a new philosophy, which creates a new culture, which is not Catholic. So he's showing how we're going to move from this Western thought to this Eastern thought, move from an idea that's actually healthy and gives growth to men, to humans, to things ultimately as well. We move from that culture of life, to a culture of death, to a philosophy that is void of accepting this world as a good thing. So that's we're gonna see that slide in philosophies and in culture. Yep.
Can you just say that again? Because
Oh yes.
that's like that's like it's crazy for me to think about actually wrapping my head around realizing that Western, all of Western culture that we have received now has turned into Eastern culture.
Yeah, that is a big claim. I think if we walk through both philosophies, I think that's a great question. But I think if you hold on to that and then ask me at the end again, I think I'll be able to sort of point back and fill in any holes and cracks that I missed. But that's a great question. Exactly. So to finish off the Eastern philosophy, they have this notion that anything, no thing will make us happy. Okay. We desire the infinite, and we notice that everything is part of this duality and it's finite. And so we have to go beyond this duality of being or non being to the infinite things. We need to go beyond this world. So what you end up is there are three levels or degrees in the Eastern philosophy. The first one is called moshka, which is a mortification, which makes in this degree you mortify to make dead. Mortify that's what mortify means, to make dead. You destroy every inclination towards finite things. So man's relationship to the world, his inclination to know, Aristotle's metaphysics, the most fundamental desire of man is to know, to know and to see things. Well, that must be destroyed in the Eastern philosophy. You must
Yeah.
the first movement, the first phase is to destroy even the inclination to receive things from the world, completely destroyed. So that's the first phase. The second is Buddha. Buddha means awakening. So once you've destroyed any desire for this finite world, you are awakened to a higher reality. Okay. So it's a little bit weird stuff and it sounds sketchy because it is. But what they're looking for is, again, trying to attain to this infinite. So they're awakened to this higher reality. And if someone becomes so perfected in this second phase that every single inclination is completely destroyed, you're completely awakened to the higher reality, your mind becomes so separated from the material body, from any relationship to the senses receiving, that's completely destroyed as much as it possibly can. You can reach nirvana. Nirvana means nothingness. Now, this state of nothingness is very, very elusive. Very few can ever attain to it. I know Father LaRue mentioned seeing someone that seemed to be in some state of nirvana. They were just completely stone faced, gone. And he walked up and nope, nothing. He said it was actually very terrifying to see how removed this man was from any surroundings. His soul was detached from even receiving the basic sensations. Very, very terrifying things.
It's like
But in
being a
this,
zombie.
yeah, a living zombie.
Yeah.
And
Like no soul.
yeah. And this is what is trying to be attained so that you are not attached to anything finite. The idea is once the soul is completely freed, the mind can then create and bend reality just by its mind. Because reality, everything that we see here, this finiteness, is bound in some way. Is some demonic trick that's all built here. Exactly how, nobody really knows, but there's some trick here, and once you're freed, you can create your own reality, your own ends. Everything, your world, the world's your oyster at that point. That's
Wow.
where you might start hearing a little bit of the modern philosophies in that thought.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, there you once you have reached the state of nirvana, that's perfection. There's
Wow.
a complete destruction of everything in the world. The end of this world is destruction. There should be nothing, so that it can go to nothingness. Because if you think about it as well, if there's nothing, how much can you put into nothing? Well, you can put everything into nothing. You have an infinite nothingness. Well, there is an infinity there. So in a sense, they have found an infinity. This is where John Sr. says they have something. There's some rationality there, but it's very twisted. It's not attractive, but it seems rational in some
Yeah.
sense. So this is where
Kind of.
he's picking up. He's practicing Hinduism, etc., etc. So that's Eastern philosophy in a very brief nutshell. Western philosophy. Western philosophy starts with saying, the world exists. We need to learn from the world. Let's just take that as our basis. That seems good and normal for us. Let's go with that. And then we learn things. We start with the material, we abstract from the material, we get an intellectual understanding, we understand higher principles, we see an order in nature. One thing is ordered to another. There are degrees of life, hierarchy of being. There's rocks, there's sentient plants, there's mobile animals, there's rational creatures, etc., etc. There's hierarchy and there's order in this creation. And things seem to do well when they're ordered well. That seems to be good for a thing, to be ordered well. Like that is what is good for that thing, is to be ordered well. So Aristotle, especially, taking up the previous philosophers and perfecting their thought, you get a notion uh, a philosophy that sees not everything as completely separate and opposed to the infinite, but instead everything has hierarchies leading to more simple and higher beings, leading ultimately to God. So every finite thing is a participant, it is a part, it participates in being itself, in infinite being, in pure being, in God. Everything comes from God and everything is ordered back towards God. So it's not a complete break and demonic trick. Instead, sure, there is disorder in the things, but those things must be ordered to a higher thing, to God. So then, instead of everything being evil and needing to be destroyed to reach this nirvana, everything should be ordered according to its nature. Everything should be put in its place. Prudence guides and even natural law on a basic level, then the divine positive law, etc., etc., etc. Everything guides man to that higher good. That is what gives us happiness. So that, in a very brief nutshell, is Western philosophy. Do you have anything else you wanted to add to that, Ed? Because I know you are well versed in Western philosophy as well.
Well, just a clarification. So it sounds like for Eastern philosophy, the whole idea is that we want, or humans want the divine, the infinite. But
Yes.
how do we get that? We can't get it here, so we have to destroy the world and then create our own reality.
Yep. And the principle is that because everything's finite, it must be evil because we desire the infinite. So there's a complete break between the material and the spiritual thing that we want. Those are two separate things. Material must be destroyed to
Ah,
achieve the spiritual, the infinite.
yeah. Huh. Yeah.
Whereas
But-
Western philosophy says,
mhm.
okay, the material must be used properly to lead us to the spiritual reality. So the lower leads to the higher, rather than the lower being completely separated from the higher.
Yeah, so that reality is not evil, but reality is good, and it leads us actually to God, to the infinite, to the divine.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
that idea about, we want to get to the infinite and we're somehow trapped in the finite material world, and that we have to destroy the material world to get out of it and to get into that infinite world. What's funny about that is it sounds a little bit like Plato to me. And I
Yeah.
think that I don't know about this for sure, but I think there might be some scholarship on that idea that maybe Plato actually got some of these ideas from Eastern philosophy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know too much of the specifics, but as far as the philosophical foundations go, yeah, that definitely seems plausible. You know, the Platonic view, there being the ideal form somewhere. He did have notion of forms, and they seem to have some connection to the material.
Hmm.
But yes, the ideal forms. He did
Yeah.
have an idea of every form here participating in that higher form, whereas the
Yeah.
Easterns have a clear cut. Like
Okay.
this is finite, so this is not gonna cut it. It doesn't participate in that infinite
Okay.
good. It's by definition a different thing. It's not
Yeah.
left and right. It's not imperfect and perfect forms.
Yeah.
It's finite or infinite. Those are two different planes. Yeah, but
Yeah.
definitely some similarities there. Yes, yes.
I guess the similarity that jumps out to me is Plato's idea of that our true self is the spiritual self, and that it's kind of trapped in this material body. And so the our goal is actually to be freed of this material body so that we can go to the ideal world. And that
Yeah, yeah,
the way we
yeah,
can start to do that on Earth is to get away from the material needs and desires and passions and to contemplate the truth, which
yep,
of
yep,
course is almost like, even if it has anything to do with that kind of Eastern notion, he's really baptizing it in a sense, even though that was before baptism, but he's making it much more closer and to reality and much more usable by by Christianity when it comes. So I don't know,
Yeah.
throwing around some ideas there.
Yeah, I think the one big shift though, because like, the Platonic notion of sort of being trapped in this body and sort of trying to release ourselves to a higher, more pure existence. I think one of the big things there is there's a notion of mortification,
Okay.
mortifying the
Hmm.
things here. And yeah, I think the tie there between Plato and the Eastern philosophy is that what you see here and what you see in the world are sort of so far apart that we kind of need to destroy what's here. So I think there's a tie. But I think where they do differ is just in I think in Eastern philosophy there's no tie whatsoever. So yeah, maybe he took that and said, well, yeah, maybe there is a connection there. But yeah, Eastern philosophy is really, when you start thinking about it, it's kind of scary how
It is,
absolute
it is
they
scary.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, how absolute they are, that everything, every kind of authority, every ordering factor in this world is so evil.
Yeah.
Every authority is by definition so evil because you're trying to play this game with everything that's inherently evil.
Yeah.
So not only do you give up, but you should stop even trying. It's so
Yeah.
bad.
It's like
Yeah.
everything is inherently evil, destroy the entire world. Like that's
Right,
the way I
right,
look at it.
right.
So
Exactly. Exactly.
say more about you were kind of getting to it, but say more about the mortification idea. How there's this difference between the Eastern idea of mortification and then even with Plato, maybe the Western idea of mortification.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So with the as a Catholic, we do mortify ourselves. We do we do kill things. We do make things dead. Mortification, mortifatio, to make dead. But it's the Catholic notion of mortification is much more of pruning. You have a tree and you cut off, you kill certain branches because those branches are not ordering, they're not ordered towards the ultimate good of that thing. So, concrete examples is, mortifying the passions. Are the passions evil? Well, no. Are they disordered? If you follow your passions, are you going to end up suffering eternally? Yeah, if you don't mortify them, you will end up disordered, very disordered. So they're inclined disorderly. They have a disordered inclination, and we must make certain aspects of that inclination. We must kill and chop off, but not the passion itself. The passion itself is very good and necessary, in fact, for us as humans. Not necessary for angels, etc., but for us as humans, this passion is a necessary part of being human. So it must be fostered, but you can't just run with your passions. Passions don't have limits. They must be mortified in a sense. They must be pruned, guided, so that those passions can give more energy, more zeal to what you are doing. Be ordered completely to the end. So that's whereas in the Eastern philosophies, the inclination itself, the very inclination to things is itself evil, must be gotten rid of, gone. That's completely different from the Western notion, the Catholic notion, the human notion, even. It's human. Eastern philosophy is so inhuman. You
Yeah.
literally destroy the most fundamental inclination of being a human, of learning anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
That's my
Yeah.
problem with the Stoics too, is that they're like passions, they got to go. And I'm like, well, you're destroying like half of the personality. But we'll have to
Yeah,
save
yeah.
that. We'll have to save that for another video.
Yes, yes, I think so. So that's the first few chapters of John Senior's book. Then he gets into, okay, how did we get from this Western philosophy, from this Western culture, this Western philosophy, Christian culture, to what we have now, which modernism, postmodernism, transhumanism, turning people into cyborgs, just this craziness.
Yeah.
How did we get here? And is there any coherency, or is it just what happened? It's just crazy, whatever. So can we track something? Is there a thread going through history? Well, he goes back to the 1500s, back to Luther. So just to sort of set the ground, John Senior sees man sort of as a culture. How does man see his relationship to God? How does man see his relationship to himself? Who am I? What is my place in this world? What is my place in existence? What's my relationship with God? What does this all mean? So, as a culture, let's say the medieval ages was very Catholic. It definitely has its scandals, its faults, but as a culture, the philosophies were very Aristotelian, very foundational. The scholastics perfecting that,
Very
very
Western, right?
very Western.
Very
Yes,
Western. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep. That's a good way, good specification. Very Western. Very trying to find the correct ordering of society
Right. Okay.
for
Yeah.
the good of all. Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
and that all works when everything's being ordered towards God. And kings come in and they try to order society more towards themselves and their own power and their own
Right.
influence and their family heritage, blah, blah, blah. But at least that's the idea. That's everyone's trying to get towards this order. What exactly that looks like, people fight over and there's wars, etc., etc. But that's what's happening.
Right.
Then you get, the 12, 13, 1400s. There's scholasticism comes in. There's a great boom in a more scientific approach to intellectual things and trying to understand what's the perfect society, all these things. But logic, especially, gets a reputation. I think it's a little bit inflated, but the reputation, at least a general notion, is logic is to a point where they're trying to figure out how many angels could sit on the head of a pin, right? Like
Right.
it's
Right.
very it's so it's so syllogistic, it's so sort of legalistic that
Yeah.
you lose a sense of the divine. It's so intellectual that it's not really personal anymore.
Hmm.
So that's again an overarching broad sweep, and that's not for everyone, but just as a general movement. So this is where humanism, there's a whole movement, Erasmus, St. Thomas More, these people notice this, that hey, there's an imbalance here, hyper intellectualization, and it's not very human. They start the humanist movement. They go back to, they started writing to each other in Latin, which was more common, but was falling out of use at this time. But they started learning Greek. That was a big thing they did. They started going back to learn Greek so they could read Homer. They could read all of the Greek tragedies, all the greats in their original Greek to get that human element. What does it mean to be human? What is a hero? What are these tragics? They go back a little bit more focused on who is man, a little bit more down to earth, less intellectual. So the pendulum swings from maybe hyper intellectual to trying to find what is man's relationship with God. So a little bit more focus on man. This is where you have Luther comes in, and he really jumps ahead of his time and makes that break. This is where you can see. This is where you start to see the same principles being enacted as the Eastern philosophies. And he says the material world, man's place, man's relationship with God is so low. It's so far down there that it has no connection with where we need to be with God. There's a
Wow.
break.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And everything here is, pardon my French, stercore mundi. It's
Yeah.
absolutely, it's terrible. It can only
Right.
be covered up and basically pretended it's not there.
Yeah.
God can only pretend it's not there and lavish his own grace on top.
Yeah.
But there's a complete disconnect. So
Yeah.
actually,
It's all evil.
Luther
Everything's evil.
just implements.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luther just implements this completely different philosophy, completely foreign from everything.
Hmm. Do you think
Then
that was because he actually had a cultural or scholarly knowledge of that? Or do you think it's just because both the Eastern philosophy and Luther were influenced by the same bad guy?
That is a great question, and I don't know. Um, I really don't know. That would be very interesting. I know from what I recall, Luther was not overly educated. He was most certainly much more educated than you or I in some ways. But I think, especially for his time, he wasn't super high. I don't I don't recall him having influence from the Eastern philosophers. My guess would just be just an absolute response of rejecting everything that's there.
Yeah.
So just seeing the corruption in the church and just jumping completely off. And I think just that, and then also I know he suffered immensely from scruples.
Yeah.
So having a incredibly low self-esteem, notion of self-worth, being on his own, not having that support of the church, of tradition, etc., and
Yeah.
just jumping off. I don't know that he was influenced by the philosophical writings as much as just he happened to come to a conclusion that has the same principles in
Yeah.
effect.
Because I see
But
it
it's very
as
interesting.
kind of like, you know, Eastern philosophy comes from the devil, and Martin Luther's philosophy comes from the devil.
Yeah, it's as
Maybe
simple as
that
that.
has, something to do with it.
Yeah.
That's
And
why
part of
it's
that too
similar.
is just, and we'll see this a little bit more later, I think, but just how not human, how inhumane that philosophy is, how destructive it is to
Yeah.
everything that's human. Like it really is. So, all right, I think we should probably move on so we can keep going with this,
Sure.
and we can get through the Western philosophy, or we'll get through the swing from the Western philosophy to the Eastern philosophy in
Yeah.
action. So then you have the humanist movement, more focus on man, who is man, more focus on languages, on the Greek writers and literature. There's this great revival, but then you get the Renaissance. This sort of glorification of man. To the point where
Yeah.
you have naked men painted all over the church ceilings and naked,
Yeah.
statues everywhere. And
Yeah.
again, all in order. The human body is a good thing. It just needs to be ordered, and it has original sin. Humans, we have original sin, and so there's a disorder, especially in concupiscence or in our pride. Wow, look at how great men is, and we disorder these things. That we disorder the hierarchy and our place and our relationship with God. And you see this. I mean, many scandals in this era. That we've all heard of, but I think just this hyper focus on man and how impressive he is and can be. So then once people realize, hey, there's something off there. So first we move from, okay, this sort of hyper intellectualism and logic, something's off. We swung to a focus on mankind, the material side, sort of more down to earth, the nitty gritty, the gritty side of man. Something's off there too. Well, they started swinging back the other way. Then you get a more emotional period. The sound must seem and echo to the sense. There's a lot of focus on the timbre of words, and there's a lot of great polyphony and stuff that comes out of here. It's drawing out what's beautiful, what's aesthetically beautiful, what's emotionally evoked from people and things. And there's definitely something good there, but that's more of a reaction to the material, bodily, fleshy side. That something's off there. Let's move to the more abstract, the more spiritual side, at least the emotional side, a little bit more there. But again, you end up just very sappy, very emotional.
Yeah.
Emotions are not going to get you anywhere. Your relationship with God is not an emotional thing. You'll see this in
Hmm.
spiritual authors are very flowery and very emotionally driven.
Yeah.
Many of them come from this era.
Would you say that's the beginning of the Romantic era?
Yes, yes, yep,
Okay.
yep, yep. I was trying to remember the term, but yes, that would be the Romantic era.
Okay.
Then following this is the scientific revolution. Francis Bacon, Newton, all these things. You guys are lost in your
Yeah.
emotional
Yeah.
feelings. We need fact. We need truth. We need reality back to the earth. Use our intellect and look into the world. Go back to Aristotle. Look at the world, learn something, put it into a principle, obtain more knowledge, get this body of knowledge. That is science. That is truth. That is the highest form of knowledge.
Yeah. I love
So,
how you're laying out all these different historical philosophies, and I'm like, man, where were you when I was teaching history of philosophy?
Oh, I was on a farm in Minnesota, probably. Anyways, so he there's this huge scientific revolution. We can make even our material lives better so that we can have more time to think. Look at how much we can produce. We can we can well, if you're going to be ideal with it, we can work with nature to produce so much more. But instantaneously, man's pride, man's greed comes in, and we can we can beat nature into submission. Hey, we have all these machines, we have all this science, we have all this knowledge. Maybe now we can force nature to change itself to make us happy. Okay. This is where you get socialism, you get communism, you get hardcore atheism of all these different variations. But socialism and communism are the main tenets where we just need a big enough system and enough people on board, and we can make enough stuff to where everyone can have everything they want. We can all be happy. Didn't work. But anyways, that's the idea. Once you start getting hyper material again, even right away in the mid 1800s, people like Kant and Descartes actually already start seeing
Yeah.
you can't dispense with morality. If you take this to the extreme and you've just swung to the side of pure science and pure going to the material to get your intellectual, what happens to morality?
Hmm.
Where's the laws that govern science? Where's the, I don't think any of them say, but where's the natural law? Where's original sin? Where's the social virtues? Where are these things? We can't pull enough from nature to make ourselves happy. So then you have Kant, who comes in, who's, oh, we need the intellectual imperative where everyone agrees, and they come up with all these things. They start
Right,
getting very
right.
intellectual, trying to fill in those gaps. And Descartes, who comes in and, well, I think, therefore I am, and we impose reality, and they're trying to solve the mystery of morality because they've solved the mystery of the material wants. Right now, we theoretically we can make ourselves materially happy. How can we make ourselves intellectually happy? Well, maybe we all agree on it. Then that's how society works. They keep pushing it. Again, all these things are tried in many different variations in socialism and communism and all these different things. Also, quick note: uh, in the mid 1800s, the brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky, he takes all these different philosophies and he puts them in one room, in one family, and he has them play out. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Highly recommend it. It's a very long book. It's worth pushing through it, especially if you see these philosophies being played out. You know, yeah. I'm not going to get too far into that because
Yeah.
that's a whole other podcast. But that's a
Yeah.
wonderful book,
That would
and
be
he
good.
he
Yeah.
writes that in the 1860s, right when all these philosophies are trying to meld and mesh. Well, then what happens? Modernism comes along. Modernism says, you guys are trying to figure out your relationship with God? Nietzsche famously says, God has died. This is not a question anymore. Why are you trying to understand who man is and what his relationship with God is? That's all a hoaxy pokesy, whimsical thing that we've been suffering over for 500 years. Give up the chase so that you can be happy. Just stop trying and you'll be happy. Give up. Well, then, when you give up on having any order or disorder, anything to even work towards, and even trying to understand how do we achieve the infinite, it gives up on Western and Eastern philosophy. And he says, "There's like, why are you even asking that question? Just go." This is where you get literature saying at the special late 1800s, early 1900s, even as early as the early 1800s, but especially late 1800s, early 1900s, you know, around and around and around we go. It's all these imagery, a lot of poetry about ships just sailing to nowhere or caught in a vortex, just spinning faster and faster, going
Yeah.
just to death, to nowhere. There's no end. There's no higher. There's no more of the stars. There's nothing. There's a lot of dark imagery.
Yeah.
And lastly, you end up with modernism. Modernism, well, what happens when you throw out that question? Well, man still has that innate desire for something, Well, we just treat man like a purely material lump. Okay, you want stuff to to make you happy? Well, how about plays? How about music? Well, we have all this technology. What if we get a light show, a TV? There's this constant flow of new technology. It also coincides with the booming of especially the United States industrial era, and
Yeah.
all the technology, all the money, all the everything is just flowing. You can constant this whole culture of consumerism.
Mhm.
Man's able to constantly get something new. So this is the first tenet of modernism. Senior says is sensationalism
Yeah.
because we want to be doing something, we want to have a purpose. Modernism says, well, just move, have constant change. There's no stability. Everything has to be constantly in motion. And that, at least in some way, makes you feel like you're going somewhere. As long as you're moving, you're going somewhere, right? We don't have an end. We deny that there is an end. But as long as we're moving, we're satisfied. So
Yeah.
the first tenet is sensationalism. Now, the second tenet is artificiality. So now, man desires not simply anything, he desires the infinite. He desires to be eternal. He's man inherently knows he's mortal and he desires the infinite. He desires to participate in that infinite, to participate in God. Well, with artificiality, this is where you have the notion that, well, you are God. You create. You truly pardon me. You, by your art, create something that no one else has created.
Yeah.
And because no one else has created it, you are creator par excellence. You are, in a sense, God. You're just as validly God as whatever God means is.
Yeah. Sounds like
Anything
transhumanism.
new. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's exactly it.
Technology will make you God. You will be God by technology. It's like total
Yes.
transhumanism.
Yes. Yes. And it's by our art, it's by our constant creativity, our constant ingenuity, our constantly moving, and that ties in with that sort of, it satiates that desire to be going somewhere, to be doing something, to be working towards something higher. Well, I'm working towards something higher and I'm the creator. I have infinite possibilities. I can create anything. And this is where I think in modern art you get this. You get, insofar as it might be considered an actual something behind it, you are creating a new sensation. Like you walk up to a piece of art, I have never experienced this feeling before,
Yeah. I
like
have never
I
seen
like
all of
oh
these. I've never
yeah.
seen paint splattered on a canvas quite like that before.
Right, and it, literally an egg just thrown at it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's egg paint, right?
Yeah.
Milk paint. Oh, throw some milk at it.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a new creative idea. You are creating, and there's a new sensation. So, in a sense, in a very, very shallow sense, it's completely limited because in a completely depressive way, you've sort of satiated, like given satisfaction to that desire to be like God, to participate in the infinite,
Mhm.
not through submission and order, but through completely breaking from everything. You have to be completely new. Otherwise,
Yeah.
maybe you're just copying something else. You need to be creator,
Wow. Yeah.
completely new creations from you and
Yeah.
creating new sensations. So we're moving, I don't know where, but we're moving there. Have you seen the newest iPhone? Well, where are all these iPhones going? I don't know, but I have the newest one. Like, are you kidding me? I'm going to
Yeah.
upload this. It doesn't matter if you're going anywhere as long as you're going.
Yeah. And that's
It's very,
crazy. It's like
yeah,
we've come full circle right back to we have to destroy everything and create our own reality.
that's exactly it. And there you see that there's no connection between man and the material world. He has to break free from that to be his own creator, his own entity. He doesn't have a relationship with that. He needs a new sensation. He needs to create new things. His mind has to come up with something new, and there has to be constantly newness. Nothing can be based in the old watter or ratter tattered worn out world. I've already seen that. I need something new. I need a break from that. And the more I can discipline myself to become more creative, I taped a banana to a wall.
The
No
banana
one's
on
done
the
that
wall. Yeah.
before. I'm
Yeah.
like, come on, guys. Like, I'm a creator of
Yeah.
something new. It's just the concept. Like, how can people pay millions of dollars for that? I really think that this is at least a part of that whole, uh, asserting, trying to assert that that philosophy is valid.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. And like the Marxism, the whole idea of Marxism is whatever existed, we have to destroy it. Just destroy everything. And we're seeing that play out now in America where we've got these Marxists running rampant and they're just like, we don't care what was in the past, it was bad, we need to destroy it. And you see that in art, where it's like
yep,
art is basically like, how can we totally sever the ties with the past? How can we just do something completely, it doesn't matter how absurd or ridiculous it is, as long as it's just radical and completely different. And basically, we're just going to destroy art and call it art.
right, right, yeah. And again, like, as long as, like, because when you have this relationship with nature, you're buying into this notion that, okay, it's going to be ordered towards something. If I'm going to imitate nature, nature has to be worth imitating, right?
Right.
Whereas why would you imitate nature? Well, because there's beauty there. It's a reflection of something higher. Okay,
Yeah.
so Eastern philosophy, Easterners are not going to like the good and the beautiful here because it's all part of this evil trick.
Yeah.
Western philosophy is at least going to try to develop that and imitate that in different ways, whether it's more intellectual or more material and more exacting. But it's going to imitate that in some way. Whereas the
Yeah.
modernist says any imitation, that's just stuck in this old rut. We need to be freed, liberated, enlightened, all these things. We need to be creators. We need to be creating these new sensations, to be moving, to be satisfying our
Yeah.
emotional impulses. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the way we look at art when we're following the Western tradition is that art is so important for us because it's beautiful, and beauty is so important for us because there's an order there. And it actually shows us how when we order reality, when we order um, nature, when we order ourselves, we order our passions, we order what we see around us, we put these things in order, then that leads us back to the infinite, the divine, as opposed to this Eastern idea, which is nope, you just got to destroy everything. That's how we get it.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's a great sort of segue into how he summarizes the end of his book, and maybe give a few things there. Is that that's exactly it. We need to order things towards their higher goods, leading to a knowledge of God. But notice there, we need to start with ordering the basic things. And over, like you said, exactly, Marxism, so many of these philosophies, starting with the French Revolution, have just needed to overthrow things, to create a new order, to destroy what's there, the very foundations, to the point where they're, creating new scales of measuring. All these things, everything needs to be overturned from the most basic foundation, starting with, the very youngest, the children. Two people said, "Give me a child till he's 5, I'll have him for the rest of his life." Those were St. Pius X and Karl Marx. It
Right.
starts in the basics, the foundational things that can build. Once you have a solid foundation, you can build on that and build on that and build on that. If you start with a very flimsy, fickle foundation, well, you end up with an imbalance and the whole thing topples. The foundations must be solid for there to be growth. A tree needs to be thick at the bottom so it can hold all these little branches up top. But it needs to start with a solid foundation. John Sr. notices that, look, nowadays, the culture's been affected, it's been effectively destroyed. These foundational ideas of man's relationship to nature, man learning from nature, taking things in, and ordering them towards God. That relationship with from okay, yes, understand who man is, but don't dwell there too long. Learn, yes, like the scientific method, learn from nature, learn science, intellectualism, the intellectual concepts, but then let them lead you to God.
Yeah.
Don't 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 say, "Oh, well, we have science. Who needs God?" Let that foundation lead you to God. That's just tying together what the scientific revolution was trying to do
Yeah.
with what Kant was trying to do, but that is what was in the Middle Ages. They're trying to solve the same questions that were already solved because they torn it down. So here we have a destruction. We have so little of this notion of subjecting ourselves to authority, to that true hierarchy, to really working with nature and not just conquering her, not just creating a bigger machine, a bigger piece of technology, a faster piece of technology, a new iPhone, a bigger internet. Instead, going back to what's natural, what is going to give to humans what we need to understand to see God, to understand what it means to be a father. You can't get that from a robot. You
Yeah.
can't get you can't understand what fire is. You can't understand what it means for to be loved. You can't understand any of these things from a material point of view. You need that material well from what I said there, material point of view, a sort of industrial or technological. Because nowadays, very much everything is, well, let's just create a bigger, better machine. Let's create a bigger internet. Let's create a new program.
Yeah.
Again, that's not the answer. We need a contact with what's real, what's basic, what's fundamental. Go
Yeah.
climb a tree, chew on some bark, eat a stick,
Yeah.
like eat some grass, like get back to the basics. And I'm not saying that you should actually do all those things, but what is a kid doing when he grabs a piece of grass and eats it? He's trying to learn something about the world environment around him from the natural world. Learn these things, see God in creation, and understand that relationship between man and God. This is destroyed. This is gone. I mean, you have
Yeah.
so many revolutions. You have, modernity trying to prove that everything is a hoax. The Bible isn't real. It's all emotion. La da da. All these things. You have, the 60s, 70s, 80s, the sexual revolution, the
Yeah.
Vatican Council, all these things just shaking everything to its core. We don't have the
Yeah.
basic goods. We don't have a basic family. This is really where he's getting to is the family, the basic unit of society is falling apart.
Yeah. All this destruction, it reminds me of um when Robert J. Oppenheimer famously quoted the Eastern I think God Vishnu or something, who said, I am now become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Mm, yeah, yeah, that would have been from the nuke.
Yeah.
Yeah, invention of the nuclear. Yeah, the whole nuclear war, everything. There was a lot of destruction to the point where I think people have forgotten how to rebuild
Yeah.
because we don't have the basic structures to make great things. This
Yeah.
is Senior's point, sort of his last chapter too, is we've lost so much of the great things. So back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, starting in the 30s, 40s, but especially 50s, 60s, 70s, there were a lot of academics who were realizing, hey, we're losing a lot of this culture. This is a really bad thing. We should try to get this to endure. How would we do this? They said, well, if we put all of the greatest things into a whole series of books, we can make the great book series. And at least we would have the greatest that has been thought and said stored in these books so that it will endure through these crazy times. Well, Senior says the great books movement wasn't so much a bad idea as it just fizzled out. And he compares it to putting good wine in old casks. so that the wine is spoiled by the vessel that's holding it. The vessel that's holding it is not able to let it to age and be good. It infects it and poisons it. It makes it rot, to turn to vinegar, to sour. So formerly we had the great books movement. John Senior, at the end of his book, The Death of Christian Culture, gives the, instead of the 100, roughly 100 great books, instead of the 100 great books, he gives the 1,000 good books. So not great works of literature, because we've lost so much that we can't receive these great things. We need these simple good things. So he gives a list, just sort of a haphazard list of here's 1,000 books, from kindergarten, well, from 0 to 4 years old. Read this, read that. This book, Aesop's Fables, illustrated by this person. It's got great pictures, down to the details. And then from age, 5 to 7, read this and this and this. And 7 goes all the way up to, I think, 25 or so. And he gives a list of about 1,000 just good books. Like, read these. This is a start of at least something good. Yeah, so that's how he ends The Death of Christian Culture.
Well, Damien, it's been great. And I've got one more question for you, and maybe we can end with this.
Sure.
Um, but as always, it's been great to talk to you. Always a pleasure.
Likewise.
If there was one thing that you could recommend that people or families could do to embrace John Senior's vision, what would it be?
Return to music, return to poetry, return to singing around the hearth, at least the family piano, return to reciting the Psalms, return to prayer. And I think true prayer is a song, or a good song is a true prayer. So that's what I would say. And that's what I'm confident John Senior would say, something similar. And read the
Awesome.
1,000 good books. Oh, well, he says no electricity. He's one of those antiquated people who just thinks we should reverse the clock because back then times were better. It's like, no. Like, look around you. It's not like we've advanced so quickly to such great heights that the old guys can't keep up. It's that we've lost the foundations of culture. It's gone. Like, we need to return enough so that we can find our footing, so we can have a grounding, so we can grow again. Like, it's not just trying to rewind the clock because you can't keep up with how good things are now. It's so ridiculous.